Yeah, good morning to you as well. Thanks for having me on.
I'm serious. I said I can't take any more commercials. I want to talk Pup Kitchen. Let's get back and talk about this. Good morning. This is a great idea. What led up to it?
Oh, there's a backstory. If you go back about 20 years, I was very adamant about cooking for our family. And I think as I progressed, I got more and more interested in health aspects of cooking and what's, good for the human body. And during those times, I started focusing more and more on natural food, things that didn't have preservative. And then at some point in time during that progression, I looked at our dog food and I thought, well, if we're eating healthy, shouldn't our dogs be eating more healthy as well? And sometime during that point, we started trying to feed our dogs some of the other known brands out there that are focused on more natural food and away from kibble. And at some point a few years back, my wife had an interest in taking it to the next step, which was making a food from us making food for our dogs. As she started doing that, she read a whole lot of information and books and what's good for dogs, what's bad for dogs. And then an opportunity presented itself about half a year ago now to purchase a commercial kitchen and start doing this on a larger level and actually selling the food. And so that's the backstory of it. It's just my wife wanted to make our own food for our dogs and to ensure our dogs were eating healthy. And I think part of it was we saw a huge improvement in our dogs' overall health after we started feeding them our food, which was less shedding, less allergies. They actually were able to have a proper weight to them. The vets really liked their weight after a while, so it encouraged us to do more with it.
Well, and take me through some of the holdups with that, because I know that, every time I'm looking down, that's what I was talking about during the live read was, we always look down when we're having maybe a nice pot roast, on a Sunday, and then you're looking at your dog's food bowl and it's a bunch of dried kibble. And it really makes you start thinking about, is this really the right thing for your dog? Were there any hangups when you were putting formulas together and handcrafting your recipes with you and your wife that you weren't expecting,
I think there was a lot. As we started doing research and purchasing books and looking at like AFSCO certifications, there's a lot of foods that are questionable for dogs. And when I say questionable, even some of the books say it could be a good for a dog, it might not be a good for a dog. So we started eliminating those out of our recipes to make sure we only focused on things that were thought to be certainly good for a dog. Also, there's a lot of lab work, tests and certifications you have to get to sell dog food. And I was a little bit taken back by that. I've started a few companies, and this was shocking to me, all of the certifications, again, lab tests, to create a recipe for a dog isn't just for dog food, isn't just creating a recipe. It's creating the recipe, sending it off to a lab to have it tested, to have it recognized by AFCO as being good for a dog, a well-balanced nutrition. And then on and above that, once you have that certification or the lab tests done, you got to send all that to the state so the Department of Agriculture can look at the results and then also make sure your labels are in line with those results. So there was a lot more, it took a lot more time. I think we spent easily 8 to 10 weeks just going through all the testing and certifications.
Wow. And now, at any point in the 8 weeks where you're just getting ready to throw your hands up and go, come on, because, I always find the journey the most fascinating part. And just hearing a little bit about it, for all of us here that might be potential consumers to know that, think about all the channels this had to go through to even make it possible. I mean, it's definitely vetted and verified.
Yeah, and I don't want to discredit anybody, but I think the most humorous story in hindsight for me was the labels. After we had everything else done, we had our registration with the state. The state still had to approve the labels. And when I sent the labels off, I got a response back that basically said the labels aren't accurate or aren't correct. Please correct them and resubmit. And so I replied with, can you expand on what's not correct about the labels? To which there was crickets, right? They didn't respond to that. And so I tried like a week later asking again, and there's just nothing back. And so I went and found the the document, the 58-page document that talks about pet labels, and read through it all. And I learned that I had fat listed on top of protein, and they want protein on top of fat, small change. So I made that tweak, sent them off for approval again, and got another rejection saying, no, they're still not correct. Please resubmit when they're correct. And I was like, what am I doing? What do I have wrong now? And so luckily I was able to figure out what I had wrong. But that was, again, I don't think I got frustrated in the process. I appreciated the process because it made me recognize how challenging it is to be able to sell a quality dog food. It's not something you just go start cooking a food and selling it. There's processes. I think it's actually, to me, sometimes more regulated than some human food.
Really?
To some degree.
Yeah, I get it. It's just to me that it's just hearing that though, and just the labels, because to me that would be one of those kind of just not irritating, but one of those little blips on the radar that I would have blown it up to be, you know, Mount Everest. And you were talking a little bit about some of your business background. Is there anything that you took out of maybe the other businesses that you've been a part of that helped you and your wife streamline the opening of Pup Kitchen?
I think there's a lot of things. I have, since I've started a few businesses, I don't get upset by challenges. I think I'm able to keep a level head and recognize that we can get around this. And, you know, again, I think if you're doing things the correct way with good intent, you're going to learn along the way as you're starting something new. So I was learning about dog food as I was going down this journey. And as I got pushed back, or as I was told, no, you have to do this, it wasn't, in my mind, negative. I was glad to learn it, and I wanted to do things the right way. So I think my acumen to starting other businesses led to me having a patience in the process of this one here, is the best thing I could say.
Now, have you and your wife, if it's okay for me to ask, have you guys partnered up before on businesses?
No, this is our first time to work together.
Oh, even cooler. Yeah. Okay, so take me through that experience. What was it like? Because I come from a little bit of a family business background, and I'm always curious to ask this question.
Yeah, been some good times, definitely. I think one of the things is my wife is definitely more, I would say, artistic with things, whereas I understand processes for a business. And so there's quite a few times where, you know, so going back to all the lab testing and certifications, right? There was times she was like, oh, I want to create a, you know, XYZ product. I know one time she wanted to do like a parfait bowl. And I go, well, do you realize, one, we can't just do that. You have to go through all those lab testing, and you can't just get creative and all of a sudden change it. And that still even went on to other things. Like she wanted to tweak a recipe. I was like, well, we can't now. The recipe is set.
Right.
And that's part of my processing. The things I enjoy doing was like for our recipes, to make sure we adhered to the original recipe that was sent off for lab testing. When we sent that off, or prior to sending it off, I had us do 3 cooks individually, so I could make a process that I knew was repeatable to the T going forward. And, you know, part of that process was I created a calculator. So for instance, the chicken pot pie recipe obviously has, you know, chicken in it and sweet potatoes and peas and other things. I think it's got russet potatoes, but we had to keep the proportions of all those the same. So depending on the cook, I knew that we might cook more or less at a certain time, depending on the orders and demand. I wanted to make sure those ratios stayed the same. So my calculator now allows us to cook the chicken. Once the chicken's cooked, we can weigh how much chicken we cooked. I can enter the weight of the chicken into this calculator, and it tells us exactly how much of every other ingredient's needed to meet our ratio. And so that's where my logic thinking, my process thinking, I think helped the process. And along the way, my wife definitely has good ideas for future initiatives. Like, you know, the couple of recipes she has suggested, I do want us to do. We've gotten feedback from customers. You know, one customer wanted more protein. I think that's a good idea. I'm sure people are going to want more of a high protein option as well. So we're going to take those initiatives and what my wife's idea is and make more recipes in the future. It's not going to happen here in November or December. It'll probably be a New Year activity. But when we do those, we have to have a similar process where I know that it's repeatable and we send it off to the lab for testing. So there's steps involved before we just create recipes. Well, I don't know if I fully answered your question about my wife and I, but the point that I was trying to make is she's a little bit more creative and artistic, whereas I bring the process.
You did. The only follow up to that is there ever a time where the business hats come off anymore?
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I
That's
think we
good.
still
That's
have,
really good
yeah,
then.
we still have a family life. We have two kids. We still try to have dinners with our kids. We still try to make our
Really cool.
personal lives our personal lives. There are times now we talk about the business around the house, and of course that happens a lot. As you know, we've teamed up with the Metro East Humane Society recently, so there's been a lot of talks around the house around that. But ultimately, yeah, there's still plenty of personal talk.
I'm emceeing the Metro East Humane Society's gala next year. I'm excited for it. They're great people, and honestly,
Yeah.
I think it's hats off, not patronizing you, but that is such a difficult thing for so many people that come on this show that are partners in business and in life to find that time. And kudos for the balance of it. But getting into your personal lives with your dogs. When does the moment you notice that this new form or different form of food for your dog was really working? Did it take a few years? Was it instant when you got him off of kibble and started going into a different form of nutrition? How long did that kind of crossover take in case folks are interested and are wanting really fast results?
Yeah, I got a couple stories for that. First off, I was fascinated with our dogs. So two of our dogs are labs. Anyone who has a lab knows they're heavy shedders. Our dogs still shed. The shedding's not gone, but the amount of shedding is hugely decreased. I mean, we used to always have hairballs around our house. We were constantly vacuuming and sweeping. A lot of that has decreased. There's still hair, but it's decreased, and that happened pretty quickly. That was I don't want to give a time frame, but it wasn't months, multiple months. It was a month or less. We noticed that. The other big thing I noticed was their weight. So back when they were on kibble, and even when we started feeding them a combination of kibble and another brand's healthy food, they were still a little bit hefty, I'll say. And every time we went to the vet was like, they need to lose more weight. They're still a little overweight. And I kept hearing that repeatedly from the vet. They need to lose weight. And so we kept cutting back their food to the point where I was concerned if they were getting enough nutrition, because these were both like 89, 90-pound labs that the vet was saying needs to shed 15, 20 pounds, but I was only feeding them a cup and a half a day. So it was a very small amount of food. And I was just like, I don't know how to get them to shed more weight. Surprisingly to me, when we started feeding them our food, our whole, all natural, holistic food, they started losing weight. And what's even more impressive is they're eating a decent amount of our food. They're not eating a cup and a half a day anymore. They're eating upwards of 4 cups a day of our food, but they're all now down to a proper weight. And the vets every time now, like they're perfect. They don't need to lose weight. They're at a good weight. And we didn't put an effort towards that. So I was putting an effort towards that when they were on kibble. But once we moved them to our food, I was like, let's just feed them and see what happens. And their weight is naturally came off. Now, I don't want to announce this as a weight loss program for dogs. I'm not making any guarantees, but at the same time, I saw it in our dogs. The other thing I've seen from customers, and customers have reached out to this, is some of the customers have dogs that had, darkness in their eyes, like a lot of tearing and a lot of, dark lines underneath their eyes. Mm-hmm. And we've had 2 customers reach out to say those completely went away after about 2 weeks of eating our food.
Now, I got a question too, because you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation here a little bit about allergies and skin, because this is something that hits close to home. My dog is... Every time I took him to the vet just a couple weeks ago, great health, great weight, but he is itchy as hell for no reason. Yeah. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And he has a little bit of a hot spot that went away. But have you noticed with the holistic food and that handcrafted food, does that kind of, can that help aid to maybe some of these allergy issues? Because I don't know what else to try. Neither does the vet. We're trying it all,
We have a pup just like that. Our yellow lab used to walk around the house scratching herself on everything. Yep. I mean, she would find a hard surface and just start scratching. And before you know it, she had a bald spot. And with our food, that has completely gone away. Again, I'm not going to say that's going to be the case for everyone. There's different allergies, different types of allergies. I know our yellow lab was allergic to a lot of stuff. But again, going back to even for humans, you've heard many times, let food be thy medicine. And I think with even dogs, if you feed them a healthy diet, a well-balanced diet, that's going to be what they need to have longevity. And I think it's similar for humans. You eat a well-balanced, well-rounded diet, you're going to have a better chance of longevity through that healthy eating.
Let me ask you this. Did you notice any change in their mood or their mobility levels?
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. That wasn't a leading question. I'm so curious about this. I am really fascinated.
Yeah, we've had, again, another couple of customers reach out to us on that as well. I don't remember the exact story. My wife would know the exact story, but one customer reached out to her, and I'm going to paraphrase my memory of it, but it was something around, their dog usually would go for walks, but really didn't want to, seemingly. And after just 10 days on our food, the dog was up and excited to go for walks. We've noticed that too. Our dogs are definitely happy to go for walks. They both shed about 20 pounds. Our dogs did. So now they're a little more
ready to go.
weight and agile. Yeah, exactly. So they're very active, very playful. Our labs are, I think, 8 and 9 years old. So that's getting old for a lab. I mean, labs can have 12 to 14 year lifespans. That's upper age.
Right.
And they're still both very active.
That's incredible. I mean, truly incredible. And, I wanted to ask you this too, because the thing that I've been most nervous about with seeing, now talking with you about a locally sourced product makes me feel 10 times better. There's just something about seeing a YouTube ad for dog food that just didn't really sit right with me, because I'm like, where's that factory at? What's going on here? There's a lot of different questions. But to know that this is done locally just gives me a comfortability level. But the big question I had with all of this is, my dog's been a kibble dog since he was a puppy. He's a year and a year and a half now, or a year and 7 months, going on 2 years. But the question would be, is there a transitionary period for their stomach to get acclimated from a dry kibble to a more of to your guys' dog food? Because to me, it would be like eating Taco Bell for, 8 months, and then all of a sudden you switch to a salad. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yes. If you just do a hard cut over, they're probably going to have some runniness coming out. I think you should transition a bit. And I think the things I've heard in the past, I've always abided by, is do like a half and half for a week, and then slowly start transitioning out the kibble. And that gives their system a chance to become acclimated with the product, which I think is an important thing to do. Oh,
absolutely. I'm glad I asked you that too, because I don't know. There was just something about that was sticking in my head, because I'm really thinking about making the switch here. And, who would be the best option, for this food? Is it all dog owners? Is there a, once we're on this, it's best to stay there? Is there a perfect, individual or perfect family for this type of product?
Well, that's a really good question. The majority of all people who have dogs love their dog and want their dog to be healthy and have a long life. And I think those people are definitely individuals who should look at feeding their dog something healthier than kibble. Going back to even humans, if you're looking at food that's well preserved and shelf stable, it's not going to be as good for us. And I firmly believe that kibble is going to be very similar for a dog. If you have something that doesn't require refrigeration, is shelf stable, it cannot be as healthy as a whole food that is what we should be eating.
Yeah.
And you mentioned local earlier. What we do like about our product is we deliver it to each person. We hand deliver it. It's not shipped. What I like about that, in comparing it to the online brands, and being fully honest, we had bought the online brands prior to.
I was curious. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had done that ourselves prior to starting to cook our own food. And my frustration with the online brands wasn't so much with the brands, but it was with the shipping.
Yeah.
So there was multiple times, and I'm really honestly saying in the course of a couple of years, 10 to 15 times, where the food didn't make it to us when it should. And not to put blame on anyone, but maybe it was delayed in shipping, maybe it was lost in shipping, but there was 15 plus times that we didn't get the food in time. So when we did receive it, it was past when we needed it, or it was ruined when we received it because the ice had melted and it was warm inside the box. And that makes it inconvenient for a dog owner who's expecting that shipment. So with us, when you order on our site, we reach out to you with usually within 24 hours to find out when you need the delivery. And again, we personally deliver it. That's why we're trying to focus on a 40-mile radius of Edwardsville, because we drive it to you and bring it to you and hand it to you or put it on your doorstep if that's where you want it at. But ideally, it's coming from us fresh to you.
See, I think this is incredible. I mean, really, that's why I really love this local portion of it. And I wanted to dive back into that here, too, because you never know what factory has, a dog food, producing a portion of it. And then on the next sector of it, or maybe 2 walls down, you got some other type of production line going on to it. Just, you never know where they're located. What were some of the challenges of finding that local spot? You said it came to you, or it kind of fell on your lap a little bit, but would it have been harder for you to do this if it didn't fall on your lap, if you had to go look for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it fell in my lap. This is where my wife is really diligent. She was probably looking for the opportunity, knowing her, which is good. I'm glad she was. But ultimately what happened was a commercial kitchen here in Edwardsville became available, not to rent, but to buy. And so we bought the commercial kitchen.
Wow.
And that is where the food is made. It's a commercial kitchen. And to what you said, it is a commercial kitchen. And so we do have another tenant or two other tenants who are using the kitchen, but it's being used for human grade food. And what I like about that is that means our kitchen is being inspected by the health department periodically to make sure we're sticking up with standards. And so our food being, dog food, I'm using air quotes, is the only thing that, and I started to say isn't human grade, but really our dog food is human grade. And that's part.
I'm not being funny, but I was going to ask you if you've tried it, because
we always eat our food. Yeah, it's kind of funny to say that. And I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but one of the jokes, one of the fun parts is right now it's a family business, obviously. And so my kids, my wife and I all get in there and cook. And there's a couple of funny things. One is we've each tried each recipe because it's completely human grade. There's nothing in there you can't eat. Matter of fact, we had one customer tell us that they took the Wake and Wag steak and eggs. So the Wake and Wag steak and eggs is beef, eggs, sweet potatoes, peppers, and spinach. He literally took a package, added salt and pepper to it, put it in a burrito, and ate it himself, which is fine. It's like a breakfast burrito is what it really is. But all of our food is human grade. And the funny story I was going to get at is after we cook, quite often, as we're packaging it all, there's a little bit of each one left over. And we will take those leftovers, whatever's left over, including any extra ingredients, and put them into a big bowl. And that's kind of like, the cobbler's son. Our dogs get some of that stuff, right? And every time one of us dares someone else to try it, because it's a mix of like all the ingredients at that point in time. And someone always has to try it to see what it tastes like.
That's incredible. And I just like the family component of this, because, you wouldn't think of a dog food company of having, that family atmosphere in this different type of approach. But really, that's what our dogs are. They're family. My dog is my son. There is no denying that, at this point in time. And whenever you started launching this, whenever people start to hear about it, was there an initial feedback of a good level, or did it take a little bit for the word to spread?
The word spread pretty quickly, but there's a lot of question around that, right? In my mind, as I'm trying to answer that. So the word spread quickly. I was surprised how many people heard of Pup Kitchen pretty quickly, which I was excited about. Now, though, we have to get people convinced that it is a quality product and they want to buy it. So there's two things to tackle there. One is awareness, which I think is still ongoing. We have to create more awareness. And then two is trust. So people actually recognize that we're a trusted company in the area. And again, going back to the Metro East Humane Society, I think this Thursday, they're going to do a pause giving and feed all the dogs a Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving Day, and they're going to do a live stream. So we're providing all the food for that at no cost as a donation to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. But I'm hoping that also people will see that the Humane Society is using our food for the dogs. That will help build some trust with our food.
The other thing that comes up with dog food, and I know this just from a personal level, when I started, I'm not going to lie, I know it's 9:42, but I was bitching and schnooks the other day, because you grab the food and you're like, oh my God, like you look down at the price. Is it something, do you think, that most families or households could afford? Or because I know that you're cooking live ingredients, I mean, this is the real deal here. How should we account our budget for this? I think that's the better question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And obviously, it's a premium food. It has a premium price, and it's unfortunate. But anytime you're using more holistic, healthy ingredients, quite often the price is going to go up a bit because it's not shelf stable anymore. It can't sit on a shelf for 2 years and still be edible as far as the manufacturer is concerned. So it's a premium product. We did do a lot of work to buy competitors' products to understand their pricing. So to restate that, some of the online competitors, in my opinion, aren't crystal clear about their pricing. They will advertise things like starting at only $10 a week,
Right.
but that's for like a 3-pound teacup dog of some sort. So it's not realistic for a lab or something. So what I did was I took 3 of our competitors that I identified, and I bought a significant amount of their food from each one of these competitors. That allowed me to weigh the food and understand a price per pound they were charging. We then took all that data and made sure we priced ours at the same price or below the lowest price per pound. Now, that also means there's, from a business perspective, maybe consequences in that, right? Because there are huge companies with all kinds of VC funding who can price things really low. We are a family business as a startup. So really argumentatively, we're priced at a point right now where our margins are very thin. But I'm okay with that again, because I'm trying to create a brand that's local and people want to use. And if we're helping dogs or helping dogs get healthier and providing value to the community, I'm okay with that. But my point being is I believe we're priced competitively. A few customers have reached out to us to confirm that they were using one of the competitors and they were getting, for instance, a monthly delivery, and they've now signed up for us for a monthly delivery, and they've confirmed that our prices are right at what they were paying, if not a few dollars below what they were paying.
It's incredible. And I really am appreciative of that answer, because that's always been like the final holdup for me is, being a younger guy out there and it's good to know that. But now I'm feeling a lot more positive about my future experience with a Pup Kitchen here. So how does the ordering work? Is it a month ahead? Is it a month order or a month supply all the time? Is it by week? Is it just by pound? How does that kind of break down if I call or place online?
Yeah, and that's one of the things on our website, which I believe can be a bit confusing. And I kind of designed the site, so I haven't found a better way of doing this yet. But when you go to our site, there's a shop button, and you can pick one of the 6 recipes. When you go into the recipe, there's a little form that asks for your dog's name, your dog's weight, your dog's age, and your dog's target weight. The purpose of target weight is for the calculator to understand if your dog needs to lose weight or gain weight. And the age is also important because the calculator uses that to see if your dog is young, active and growing, or older and less active and needs a little bit less of a caloric intake, right? So once you enter those fields, there's a calculate button, and that calculate button gives you how much food your dog needs per day, and it shows it to you in ounces. From there, there is a input box that you can enter how many days of food you want. It prices the food accordingly by pound is what it does. So it is purchasing by pound, but ultimately it tells you how many pounds you need to feed your dog for however many days you enter.
I'm nerding out about your calculations, man. I just think this is like, out of all the interview, I love how you're getting to these numbers. I geek out about this stuff. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I appreciate it. Again, I'm big on processes, and so I didn't want to take. And I want to answer your question before. Sorry,
it was my fault.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So ultimately, once you enter the number of days, you can put it into your cart. When you put it into your cart, there is a option where I want this repeated weekly, or I want this repeated every other week, or I want it repeated monthly, or I just want a one-time purchase. So you can really set up your own schedule. You can do it one-off, one at a time. I think there's a bit of a discount. I shouldn't say I think. There's a bit of a discount for creating a subscription. So your individual one-time purchase is about $8.49 a pound, whereas the subscription price is $7.95 per pound. And there's no commitment to the subscription. You can cancel at any time. But ultimately, with the subscription, you can select a weekly subscription, a bi-weekly subscription, or a monthly subscription.
Well, and honestly,
go ahead.
Just doing the by the pound, though, that's really not that far off from some of the kibble that you're seeing even at Schnucks. I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, if you look at the bags and you break down how many pounds of dog food are in there, I mean, that's a pretty quick number. And to be even $4 or $3 off of dried kibble is pretty damn good for pricing. In all seriousness, I mean, I was just doing the math in my head thinking about that, and that makes sense.
Yeah. And going back to your calculator, yeah, I really enjoyed the process of building the calculator that I built. I went to other sources such as PetMD and looked at their recommended serving. And you did a lot of research on recommended serving size for dogs. And one thing I noticed was a lot of the calculators strictly rate on the dog's weight. They don't take into account if the dog needs to lose weight or if the dog's young or old. And I don't want to pinpoint anyone, but a lot of them are just like, if your dog weighs 85 pounds, give them this many cups of food per day.
Yeah.
And it was all it was. And so our calculator tries to take into account more as far as age, if they should be losing weight, if they should be gaining weight, and those kind of things. So it gives you ideally a little bit more of an accurate intake for your pup.
And now that we're at the final portions of our conversation, but Marc's going to be joining us again next week for another interview that I'm really excited about for Thanksgiving. Yeah. I wanted to talk about our process. So once it's delivered, you guys show up at our door, drop it off. We appreciate it. How does it, do we need to add water, or do we just put it in the bowl, or what's that process look like for us?
That's a great question. So every order can be tailored to what you need. What I mean by that is our typical process in the kitchen is, so we follow all human grade food procedures. And to that, I have my food manager license. I do personally. Really? So I know the processes to handle food for a human, and we follow all those. And so what that means is, when we finish cooking something, it's got to go from cook temperature down to 70 degrees within 2 hours. And then it's got to go from that 70 down to cooling temperature, which is in the refrigerator for 41 degrees within 4 hours past that. So we follow all those things. When we finish compiling a recipe, and we've created, let's say, going back to the Wake and Wag steak and eggs, we've created that recipe, we package it, and then we typically start freezing it. And we have freezers that have, kind of a turbo freeze mode on them. So it cools it down to freezing temperature pretty quickly. We usually deliver it to people in a frozen state. Frozen because it can last 3 to 6 months in your freezer safely to be able to be thawed and served to your dog. Once you thaw it, it's recommended to eat it within 5 days of thawing. So again, not when you start thawing it, but once it has thawed, make sure that it gets consumed within 5 days. So what I said real quickly, since we're personalized, we do have certain people though that ask, can you please give me mine thawed? And we will do that. We will work with that person to make sure their delivery is a thawed delivery and not a frozen delivery.
Wow. That's actually got to be a little bit tougher, I'm sure. And so just to clarify the thaw and the wait time, because we used to do a food safety segment on the show, so I think it's really cool that you're bringing this up. The counter doesn't start until, let's say I bring it out at 8 o'clock at night because I know I'm going to feed my dog Nico at 5:45 in the morning to thaw it. That wouldn't start until the following day after I already start serving them, correct? Just for the audience you never know how these FAQs get.
So the recommended process, what I do is I keep a few days worth in my refrigerator as I use a day. So at the end of every day, I go to the freezer and pull out enough. So I have kind of a rotating 4 or 5 days in my refrigerator. So the stuff takes, depending on the size of the package, right? So our packages are 1 pound packages quite often. A 1 pound package can easily take 12 hours, 14 hours to thaw in the refrigerator. Once it's thawed in the refrigerator, and you have 5 days past that point to serve it. Really? And I don't want to get anyone's dog sick. 5 days in my mind is a very safe estimate. We have our dogs. I'm not gonna recommend anyone do this, but I have definitely fed my dogs food that had been thawed 7 days earlier. So it's in my mind, if you do a DADOT system, right, in any serving facility, most food is going to last 7 days, which is 7 days past today. Today counts as one, I should say. So it's 1 day for today, and then 6 days following is what a food's going to last, even for human consumption.
Really fascinating. All right, a couple more questions for you, and thanks for hanging in there on my illness day, man. I am got smoked by some type of cold, so I appreciate you putting up with my horsey voice and everything else. But the other couple final questions: how long does it take for you guys to prepare your orders every week? What's that look like when you guys are in the kitchen?
It's a lot of fun, in my opinion. I try to have fun in most things I do, whether they can be stressful or not. It's a lot of work. First off, I'm not a young pup anymore. So the first few, so taking a step way back, right? We started cooking in the kitchen just to get used to the process back in May or June. And we didn't start selling our product until late August. So we had many cooks in the kitchen. And I would say going back to May or June, at the end of every weekend, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. I was just so sore, right? And I work out. I'm not someone who just sits around, but I do have a job where I sit here a lot. But ultimately that was using different muscles that I had not used enough. And I was just exhausted exhausted. That has improved. I can now, be in the kitchen all weekend long and not have that amount of soreness. So I can see an improvement there. But the kitchen time for me is fun because it's really, again, the whole family quite often. My older son, he is a blast in the kitchen. He has kitchen experience. He's worked in a local kitchen, a local restaurant in the past. So he's got a lot of experience and he's a lot of fun in the kitchen to work alongside. We have modified our cook to where now Friday after work, we try to go up there and start our cooking process. And we try to get the proteins out of the way on Friday. So our goal on Fridays are to cook the proteins and cook the grains. We have a couple recipes that have like rice in them. So those all get cooked on Friday. We get them all cooled down into the walk-in cooler on Friday. And then Saturday, we come in and do all the vegetables, which is a lot of dicing and cooking of the vegetables. And I like to add that everything is cooked for our products, which is important because if someone, let's take all the scares we've seen in the last couple of years around Listeria or E. coli in food and that kind of stuff. Those things, those pathogens are killed at the right temperature. So we do cook all of our food, again, to follow human grade standards. They're all cooked to the proper temperature. So if E. coli is present in something, it's going to be killed as it's cooked. And obviously there's certain pathogens that don't work that way, but most of them do work that way. So we cook on Friday, we cook all the vegetables on Saturday, everything's in the walk-in cooler, and then Sunday is the packaging day. So we spend all 3 days in the kitchen with the family.
I love it. Hey, Marc, before I let you go, what's the best way for us to stay up to date on Pup Kitchen and to place our orders now?
Absolutely. So pupkitchen.com is the website. You can find out a lot of information there. We are on social media, Facebook and Instagram. And I think we have weekly, I shouldn't say weekly, 3 to 4 posts per week on those platforms. But I think pupkitchen.com is probably where you can go to find out more.
Well, Marc, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to talking with you again on Tuesday when we tape that conversation for Thanksgiving. But best of luck with this. I'm super excited to learn more, and I can't wait to see if I can sign Nico up and get him some new food.
I appreciate the conversation, CJ. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. 9:55, a little bit of change. More daily show comes your way after this top of the hour news break, right after this on RiverBender.com.